This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so it's just about the hour. All right, we're just maybe 1 or 2 more seconds and then we'll get started. Okay. So, good evening, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Happy Tuesday evening. And welcome to our second edition of 2019 of our Blissfully Balanced webinar series. So, once again, thank you for joining me live if you're watching live right now. And for those who are watching the replay, hey, everyone. So, this month, in honor of Heart Health Month, I figured we would focus our talk on heart health. So, you know me, I'm a chatty Cathy. So let's just dive right into this and get this party started, right? All right, so here we go. So, I mean, this is, I think some people have already know this. They know about me. Um, I'm Dr. Khadija Douglas. I try to get the story, make it spicy, but really about me. So I am originally from the beautiful province of Ontario in Canada. I studied at one of the 9 accredited naturopathic medical schools in North America. It's called Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine. They are located in Arizona, so Tempe, Arizona. I currently reside and live in eastern Pennsylvania, Bucks County specifically, so just about maybe 45 minutes north of Philly, 30 minutes to Jersey. You can Google it for any other information. During my 4 years of medical school, in addition to taking course curriculum, I studied and took advanced courses in nutrition, botanical medicine, women's health. One thing I really loved about our school was we used to have monthly women's clinics where I had the opportunity to do PAP exams, remove IUDs, um, you know, do different inspections, breast exams. So that was really fun. As a student in graduate school, I also worked with a couple of classmates. We created a healthy eating challenge for law students, which was really fun. And you've heard me say this once, but I really truly believe and mean it when I say that I love to empower women to reclaim their health. So there we go. Technology today. So today we're going to talk about cardiovascular disease. We're going to talk about your cardiovascular system. We're going to talk about some of the risk factors. Let's talk about the role that hormones play when it comes to heart health. We'll talk about cholesterol, labs that I like to run for some patients that are dealing with heart issues. And then, as always, I like to give a couple of goodies, things that I like to use in terms of herbs, nutrients, diet, home, and lifestyle recommendations. So, cardiovascular system. All right. So we have this amazing body, this amazing vessel, and our cardiovascular system is our an organ, so it's our heart, and we have all of these vessels that help to pump blood. Blood is needed because it delivers oxygen to all of our tissues and all of our cells. Without it, our cells and tissues literally would die, right? So we have an organ, heart. It's a very, very, very strong muscle. It has 4 chambers, and then it's going to pump blood throughout your entire body. So we start here in your left side of your body, and then it pumps through everywhere, up to the brain, down to the feet, everywhere. So we have arteries that are going to carry blood away from the heart. That's going to have the fresh oxygenated blood. Then we have our veins that take away the trashy deoxygenated blood, is the way to look at it. And then we have capillaries that are just the interconnection. It's like the meeting point of an artery and a vein. All right. So, just some facts that I thought were really interesting as I was preparing for this. Did you know that your heart beats 115,000 times a day? I thought that was a pretty random, not random, but really interesting statistic. So, it's going. Your heart is a muscle, it's beating, so it needs energy, it needs fuel. Your heart is going to pump about 2,000 gallons, or for those who do a different metric system, 7,570 liters of blood every day. It's a hardworking vessel. This is really interesting, I thought, too. A woman's heart actually beats slightly faster than a man's. And if you were to take all of the blood vessels out of your body, it would extend over 60,000 miles. That's a lot. So it's really important that we really spend time focusing on heart health, not just as women, everyone in general. But I think it's really important that we start to discuss and have um, more conversations around it. So when it comes to women, cardiovascular disease is actually the number one leading cause of death for women in the United States. So we're talking about 1 in 4 deaths, 1 in 4 female deaths. And I was reading a study or was a survey where they polled thousands of women, and most women have the belief that actually breast cancer is the number one killer of women, when in reality it's heart disease. So it's funny, we're all nervous and stressed out about breast cancer, and rightly so, but we also need to make sure that we're taking care and protecting our hearts. Almost two-thirds of women who die suddenly of coronary heart disease have no previous symptoms. So heart disease is prominent in women, but it's also very silent. So we'll dive into a little bit more of risk and signs and symptoms in a minute. So really important that you're taking care of your heart health, you're getting your annual, checkups at the doctor, you're monitoring your blood pressure. And as females, a lot of the times, we're not going to have a lot of those symptoms that you might have men complain of. So men earlier on will have signs like high cholesterol, high triglycerides, blood pressure at a younger age, heart disease. So that's why, in my personal opinion, I feel like a lot of attention has been shifted on men and cardiovascular disease versus women. So how do we really know if we have it? If I just mentioned, it's silent. So some things I always tell people, and just things to be cautious of, research has shown that most women, when they are experiencing a heart attack, stroke, or any type of heart disease event, they have sharp pain, that's sharp chest pain. So men typically will describe it as like a crushing, hard to breathe sensation, whereas women, it's going to be sharp, it's going to be burning. It actually might even look like you're having really bad acid reflux. We're going to have pain that radiates to the back, to the jaw, to the throat. So, I really encourage females to really don't dismiss those symptoms. If you think, oh, just Tums will take care of it, if that is constantly happening, get it checked out. Go to your doctor, stay on top of them, because that's your health at the end of the day. Um, Oftentimes, lots of women are going to remain undiagnosed until they've actually had a heart attack or a stroke. Um, and some common symptoms that are experienced by women are heart attacks. So a heart attack, that's when there's a blockage to one of the vessels of the heart. So the specific vessels that supply the heart with blood are called coronary arteries. So anytime one of those get blocked, we have a heart attack. A stroke occurs in the brain. That's the same idea, that there's no blood flow to a certain area of the brain. And arrhythmia is when you have an abnormal heartbeat, and then heart failure is exactly what the word says, is your heart is failing. It doesn't do what it needs to. It's not pumping. People with heart failure typically will tend to have lots of issues with swelling in the lower extremities, because your heart it's not able to pump and circulate fluid throughout the body. So, are you at risk? So, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, smoking, those top three, where the star is, are the most common risk factors when it comes to heart disease. And even if you have one, it puts you at a 10% risk. If you have all three, so if you have a history of high blood pressure, cholesterol, and you smoke, that triples your risk of heart disease, i.e., heart attack or stroke. Other things that put a person at risk: diabetes, insulin resistance. And the reason is this. So, diabetes or insulin resistance happens when you have sugar hanging out in your blood vessels. So really the only thing that should be ever in your blood vessels is blood. There shouldn't be cholesterol. There shouldn't be sugar. That needs to be inside of a cell. So what we end up seeing is folks who are uncontrolled diabetics, poorly controlled, they start to accumulate lots and lots of sugar in their blood vessels. So now what we have is, let's just imagine this is your blood vessel and it's normally flowing. Now what you have now is your vessels become narrower, and now you're reducing the amount of blood flow to an area. So that's why that condition is an issue. Overweight and obesity. Well, this puts you at risk because now you are putting extra stress, extra strain on your heart. Your heart has to pump harder to get through all of the extra fat on the body. Physical inactivity. When you sit down, so the big thing with physical inactivity, especially when it comes to women, so we have estrogen, which actually makes us prone to make more blood clots and form more clots. If we are constantly sitting down at a desk, um, sitting on a couch, not moving around, now we can have blood clots forming in various areas of our body. If that blood clot breaks off, now it can travel to the heart, cause a blockage. It could travel to your brain, cause a stroke, and now we have serious issues. Excessive alcohol use also can actually increase risk of blood clot formation. And don't know if you've recently just seen all over social media and the news, but now they are finding Roundup, which was used for killing weeds, in many alcohol and adult beverages that are being sold. So, really interesting. So, just everything in moderation, I always say. All right, so we've talked about that. Now, let's talk about how hormones, and we'll talk about two in particular, can affect your heart health. So the first hormone, obviously I'm going to talk about estrogen because we all know I love my hormones. So estrogen, brilliant hormone. I could tell you I love it. Estrogen binds to various receptors in the body, including your heart. So what does that mean and what does that look like? So there are some good side effects to having estrogen bind to receptors in the heart, and there's some negative side effects of having it. So one thing I just wanted to point out that was really interesting, the American Heart Association said the loss of natural estrogen, so when they say natural is what we're producing, as the woman ages actually contributes to the risk of heart disease. And we're going to talk about this in a second. So estrogen increases our good cholesterol. It lowers your bad cholesterol. It causes your blood vessels to relax and dilate. So when our blood vessels are now relaxed and dilated, blood flows a lot easier. Your heart's not pumping and working as hard, and your body's pretty chill and relaxed. Another great thing about estrogen and how it protects our heart is it actually goes around and it removes pesky little free radicals, which essentially just think of a free radical as something bad. It removes these free radicals from the lining of our vessels to help prevent damage. Too many free radicals in the body actually damage various tissues, various organs. And so it's great to have estrogen come in as like a superhero and just go around and remove those detrimental molecules. Estrogen also helps to lower the amount of plaque in your vessels. When we have too much plaque because of cholesterol building up in our vessels, it's known as something called atherosclerosis. And basically, what that does is, once again, it narrows your vessel space, so now you have less blood flow. So it's a great thing to have it, right? However, on the flip side, estrogen actually promotes blood clot formation. And once again, like I said, we don't want to have too many blood clots because with that, now what's ended up happening is you're just increasing the risk for heart attack or stroke. So estrogen, once again, good and bad. You always want to make sure that that hormone is being balanced. And like that previous statement from the American Health Association said, as a woman ages and she starts to produce less and less estrogen, we actually see a comparable rise in the amount of heart attacks and heart disease amongst women. I think I've previously mentioned this before, but most females typically, when I say typically don't tend to have heart attacks or heart disease in their 30s, in their early 40s. What we typically tend to see is men dying from heart attacks in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s. And then the minute, women hit menopause, 50, 55, 60, now those rates of heart disease, it's double that of our male counterparts. Okay. Cortisol, second hormone. So cortisol, we've talked about before. Cortisol is your stress hormone, your fight or flight, your being chased by a tiger hormone. It's going to get you through the day hormone. I love cortisol. Cortisol gets you up in the morning, right? But too much of anything is never a good thing. And I say this all the time, everything in moderation. So with cortisol, we know it's made in the adrenal glands. Our adrenal glands sit right on top of our kidneys, and it's going to release cortisol. So when it does that, it does a couple things. It increases your blood pressure because once again, you need to run away from the tiger. So by increasing your blood pressure, now you're delivering more oxygen to your body so it can run away, it can keep up. It's going to increase your blood sugar. Once again, you're running away from a tiger, you're being chased. Your body needs energy and fuel, so we start to break down sugar, release it into your blood vessels. Now, if you're constantly in a state of being stressed out without actually really running from a tiger and not actually using up that fuel, then you actually now are going to have a surplus of sugar just hanging out in your vessels. And what does that lead to? It predisposes you to type 2 diabetes. Once again, you're running away, you're stressed out, that tiger's chasing you, you're increasing your cholesterol levels and your triglyceride levels for putting more of that into the blood. So constantly being in stress increases your blood pressure, but now we have this prolonged effect of being stressed. And what we end up seeing now is that same vessel that was perfectly clear without anything in it, now we start to accumulate sugar in there, it gets narrower. Now we start to accumulate some triglycerides in there, it gets narrow in there. And then we start to accumulate some cholesterol. And now we have this nice vessel filled with plaque, and now your heart is pumping even harder to get blood through. Okay? So once again, cortisol, I like it. It wakes you up in the morning. But being constantly stressed out, constantly driving home in traffic, constantly having to worry about bills, mortgage, death of a family member, loss of a loved one, those things are very stressful. Even just waiting in line at the grocery store, right? That causes stress. So just being mindful of how that stress affects the body. And just to note, whenever we have excess stress and cortisol in the body, we actually increase the amount of inflammation in the body. So studies have shown the relation that cortisol or stress can actually be really deadly, because now what we end up having is a signal sent to the brain, and now we have this cascade of just inflammation everywhere in the body. And too much inflammation now also will cause narrowing of your blood vessels. So it's this vicious cycle that we really want to try to break. I know stress is inevitable for many, but if we can do little things every day to slightly reduce our stress, it'll be for the best of our health, right? All right, now let's talk about cholesterol, because I know for many a years, quite some time, cholesterol had this really terrible reputation. Like, don't eat any food with fat in it. Everything needs to be low fat. Cholesterol is terrible. You don't need cholesterol in your life. And now what we're seeing, a lot more research actually saying the opposite, where some cholesterol is actually pretty good, and you actually need some cholesterol in your body to get you through. So I'm here to hopefully share with you that not all cholesterol is bad cholesterol, right? So cholesterol is a type of fat that we have in our body. So sometimes you'll hear the word lipid. Maybe your doctor will order you like a lipid test. It's just a type of fat. So cholesterol is a type of fat. It's found in our body. We get cholesterol from our food, but we also produce cholesterol in our liver. So there's not just one type of cholesterol. There's actually many different forms of cholesterol. Now, cholesterol doesn't just travel in the body, in the blood vessels by itself. It's actually bound to a protein, and this protein is called a lipoprotein. So lipoprotein binds to cholesterol made in the liver, travels through your body. There's different types, and the three types that we'll talk about are HDL, VLDL, and LDL. So cholesterol, also just to touch on it, precursor for our hormones, which is why I say it's not a bad thing. You need cholesterol in your life. You don't have cholesterol, you don't make cortisol, you don't make estrogen, testosterone. We talked about this in our last webinar, right? Like that entire cascade of hormones. If you don't have cholesterol, you don't make vitamin D. You need that. If you don't have cholesterol, we can't make bile. Bile is produced by liver and gallbladder to help digest our food. So cholesterol is very important. All right, so good cholesterol is the first one we're going to dive into. So this is the HDL, the high density lipoprotein. This is the one that you want to have higher amounts than the other ones that we'll discuss. And so HDL, what it does is it goes around in your body, travels through your blood vessels, and any cholesterol it sees hanging in a vessel, it accumulates it. It picks it up, it absorbs it. Once it gets to a decent size, it actually gets transported back to the liver and then broken down either to be used for hormone or just processed and eliminated throughout the body. So that's why we like HDL, right? It's the good one because that's its job. It's going to go through our vessels and it's like, oh, look at that cholesterol. Come over here and look at that over here. And that's what it does. That's why we like it. However, then we have the opposite. We have our bad cholesterol. LDL is one of the types of bad cholesterol, and we call it low density lipoprotein. This is very damaging. LDLs can be in different particle sizes. The smaller ones are more detrimental to your health because they can actually get stuck and clogged and break off quicker in your vessels. So LDL, we do not like LDL. Why? LDL likes to build up and form plaques on your artery walls. Remember, arteries are responsible for pumping fresh, oxygenated blood to all of your tissues. If we start to damage our arteries because of plaque buildup, now we are reducing the amount of blood flow to our organs, to our entire body. If we have really high levels of LDL cholesterol, it's going to just increase your risk for heart disease, heart attack, and stroke. So when it comes to LDL, one thing it's important to remember is that LDL, low density lipoprotein, does get tested very regularly. And I wanted to just share a really interesting fact. We'll come back to it, but it's okay. And then, so you never want to have too much LDL in the body, so it's bad. And sometimes people will think of like LDL as like lousy or like loser cholesterol. So whenever you see LDL, just think of it as not the great one. You don't want too much of it. Like I said, it'll build up, will lead to atherosclerosis. It damages your vessels. That's what's happening. The other type of bad cholesterol is your VLDL. So VLDL, very low density lipoprotein, actually gets made right from the body, and we release it into our bloodstream. The only difference between LDL and VLDL is LDL carries cholesterol, VLDL carries triglycerides. Don't get, I'm spewing a lot of words. At the end of the day, too much of either of these in the body is not a good thing, because it either means you have too much triglycerides or too much cholesterol. Either one forms plaque, causes damage, narrows your vessels, reduces your blood flow, increases risk for heart attack and stroke. Okay. So I just want to take a second here to just talk about how VLDLs, HDLs, and everything is all related. So right over here, we have VLDLs. So it's showing you the breakdown of what VLDL is. So VLDLs have lots of triglycerides in them. Triglycerides are created in the body because of an increase or an excess consumption of sugar, fructose, glucose. Whenever we consume those in excess, our body stores it as triglycerides, okay? So we have VLDL that's going to get released from the liver out into the body. Now, some of our cells actually do need triglycerides to function, right? You're running away from that tiger, you need energy. We need to break down VLDLs. So it's going to get released. It's going to travel throughout the body, going to drop off some triglycerides at the organs that need it, at the cells that need it. And as it goes from cell to cell, organ to organ, it's going to become an IDL, an intermediate density lipoprotein. So as you can tell, we're losing some of the triglycerides. Then what ends up happening now is once it's pretty much depleted all of its triglyceride stores, so it's dropped off triglycerides at each of these cells, we end up with an LDL. And LDL, remember, is the bad cholesterol. It's the lousy cholesterol. It's the one that's going to build up and form plaques in your vessels. We do not want it. So when we have too much triglycerides because we ate too much chocolate bars, too many pastries, too much white bread, too much alcohol, too much sugar in general, our body stores it as triglycerides. It gets packaged into this VLDL. VLDLs get used up by the body for energy. Then we're left with an LDL. And now too much VLDL leads to too much LDL, too much plaque in your body. We've just increased our risk for heart attack and stroke. Okay. So at the end of the day, VLDL, LDL are not our best friends. HDL is. Okay. So when it comes to lab testing, you're probably thinking like, what in the world would you even test for this? So very specifically, I'm always going to want to know what a patient's lipid profile is, because everyone's genes are different. Everyone's genetic makeup, hereditary is different. And there are actually some conditions whereby you are born to produce excess cholesterol. So if that's your issue, then we need to know that. There's also some conditions out there that exist where your body is unable to break it down. So now you're accumulating too much cholesterol. So either way, these are the labs that I like to run or tell people to get their PCP or their GP to run for them. So a lipid profile is just measuring the different types of lipids or fats that are found in the body. It gives me a really good idea at how much of a risk a person is at for heart disease, stroke, heart attack, etc. So total cholesterol, it looks at LDL, HDL, VLDL. It looks at everything together. So all of your cholesterol, and there's a number. Ideally, that number should be under 200 milligrams per deciliter. If it's not, don't worry because we can fix it, right? Triglycerides, remember that triglycerides are because you've eaten too many sweets, too many sugars, they get converted. Okay, triglycerides need to be under 150. HDL, that's the good cholesterol. Ideally, I like to see it above 50. Greatest is when it's right around 60. That's like that sweet spot. LDL, the bad cholesterol, we want it under 100. Anything over that, you're just increasing your risk for heart attack, stroke, heart disease. VLDL, that one also a bad type of fat. We don't want too much of that. It should be between 55 to 40. So just, really quickly, I tell people this all the time. Cholesterol is never a bad thing, right? It's not a bad thing when your body makes it. The issue is when we start to consume too much from diets. So when we're eating and we're eating too many foods that are fried, that are fatty, that are processed, that's where the issue lies. So cholesterol, like I said, they're important because it's the building block. The more fatty foods, the more unhealthy fatty foods you eat, it increases your cholesterol levels. Triglycerides made by the body, like I said, under 150, we use it as energy. So we need some triglycerides in the body. And anytime we start to see numbers over 150, that to me is a red flag. Your diet is off and we need to do some tweaks over there. So that's really important. Omega check. Some labs do this. I like to run this because what it does is it breaks down how many omega-3s, omega-6s, and 9s a person has. And this is helpful to me because omega-3s and 6s help to maintain that inflammation balance. If we have too much cholesterol, too much stress, you have high levels of inflammation. I need to make sure that you have a good amount of omegas that are going to bring it down. Ideally, the ratio should be 1-to-1. If you eat or you know someone who eats the standard American diet, which is fried, processed, refined foods, they are typically going to have higher levels of their pro-inflammatory omega than they will their anti-inflammatory. And then I also like to run the cholesterol to HDL ratio. Some labs will do this, and if not, then I'll just take the cholesterol to HDL and we'll work it out. The higher that number is, that's when we run into issues once again. You see a trend. The higher certain numbers are, the more you're increasing your risk for heart attack, heart disease, stroke, with the exception of HDL, which is our good cholesterol. All right, so HSCRP, also known as high sensitivity CRP, I run this for anyone who has a history of heart disease in their family. I will also run this if a person is currently on any kind of medication for heart disease, blood thinner, etc. So what this is, high sensitivity CRP is a protein made in our body. It's elevated when there's lots of inflammation. High sensitivity is specific to the heart. So if you have a high sensitivity CRP, that indicates there's lots of inflammation in your cardiovascular area. Could be because you have plaque, could be because your diabetes is uncontrolled, something is going on. It could be because obesity, and that's affecting your inflammation as well. So they recommended if you have a 5 to 10% chance of having a heart attack within a given time frame. Like I said, I like to run it if someone is coming in on a cholesterol medication, on blood pressure medication, they recently had a heart attack or a stroke, and the recovery. I like to have that number, gives us a good starting point, and then it gives us a goal to bring that down to what we wanted to get to. It's tested via blood. There's no, day or rhyme or reason when you need to get it done like other labs, but it's a goodie as well. So my second favorite part of these webinars are some of the treatments that I like to use and my treatment approach and my theory and reasoning when it comes to addressing and supporting cardiovascular health. So let's dive right in. So in terms of herbal supplementation, I love herbs. I'll just preface it that way. Ever since visiting Gaia Herbs in North Carolina and seeing these herbs, and then also experiencing them firsthand myself, I love herbs. Um, we have this land, we have nature. She's giving us all these gifts. We should use them. So hawthorn berry is one that I love. Hawthorn is called food for the heart. And the reason being is studies have shown that when people take it, they're just drawn to the cardiovascular system. It has such a strong effect on supporting every aspect of your cardiovascular system. So supports the heart, supports your arteries, supports your veins, supports the vessels, all the connective tissue, the collagen that make up the vessels to keep them strong. It supports that. It also helps to bring down blood pressure. So it has a not a very strong blood pressure lowering effect, but it does help to reduce blood pressure. It helps to increase circulation to the arteries of the heart. Oftentimes, we're always concerned when someone has a heart attack because there's certain veins or arteries, i.e. the widowmaker, that, if you have a blockage there, very, 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 very severe effects. So we always want to make sure that we're protecting those vessels that nourish the heart, right? The heart needs its own blood flow, and that's where those coronary arteries come into play. All right, then we have Tilia. Tilia is also very gentle, very mild. Great if you're someone who has anxiety and it causes them to have tachycardia, so a really, really fast heartbeat. Maybe you get really nervous and that causes it, or perhaps you have high blood pressure because you have blockage because of plaque buildup. Tilia is a great one. Tilia is actually really good as a tea as well, or you can take it as a tincture. This right down here is Hawthorn by Wise Woman Herbals, and it's a solid extract. So it's a very thick, it's like a syrup almost. It tastes really yummy. It's made from berries. You could put it on your food. You could put it on crackers, toast, pancakes. You probably shouldn't be eating pancakes, but you get see what I'm going, right? You can eat it, and it's very tasty. So two others, bergamot. I really like bergamot. So bergamot, I was reading a study. What they found, they had two groups. They had three groups. They had a group that just did bergamot alone for 4 weeks. They had a group that did bergamot and a statin, and then they had a group that just took a statin drug. So statin drugs are very common for folks who have cholesterol or high cholesterol. They're often put on a statin medication. So like simvastatin, atorvastatin, rosuvastatin, Lipitor would be the common name for it. And what they found was the group that was put on bergamot had very similar, if not equal, reductions in their cholesterol levels as did the group on the statin medication. So blew my mind away. The group that was taking both the statin and the bergamot, what they ended up finding was they could actually reduce their statin dose. So statin drugs, I get it, there's a time and a place, but there's been some really undesirable side effects that have come up from folks taking statins. And so with us being on a statin, you have to make sure that you get your liver enzymes tested every so often. It could cause muscle damage. It can cause nerve. So bergamot is a very safe alternative, and you don't have to worry about getting your liver enzymes tested. You don't have to worry about taking an additional supplement for it. You don't have to work. So I really enjoy that fact with bergamot. It's really great. And Orthomolecular is the company that I like to use when it comes to bergamot. Another study they did with bergamot, 77 patients, they took 1,000 milligrams of bergamot every single day for an entire month. Cholesterol decreased from an average of 278. So remember, cholesterol needs to be under 200. So it went from 278 down to 191 in 4 weeks. So that's 978. That's 80 plus points it dropped in 4 weeks from taking 1,000 milligrams of bergamot a day. That's a day. I usually have people take a little bit higher, so we get aggressive with it. So um, once again, taking bergamot reduces the need for you to take higher levels of a statin medication. So just an alternative. Second botanical on there is raw wolfia. I like to use raw wolfia as a second line. It's not going to be my first go-to. My first go-to will always be diet and lifestyle, but raw wolfia I know will get the job done. The reason being is raw wolfia actually works by depleting your depleting all of the adrenaline pumping in your body. So whenever we're stressed, we release adrenaline, we release cortisol. Raw wolfia breaks it all down. It depletes it, so it's never around and long lasting in the body. So if you're constantly depleting cortisol, adrenaline, then your blood pressure is always going to come down. However, the flip side of it is raw wolfia just depletes everything. So not only does it deplete cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline, it also depletes your dopamine and your serotonin. So you have to be very careful with that as well. Dopamine is another good hormone, neurotransmitter that we don't want. So I don't do it for long terms, but I will pull out the heavy hitter if needed after we've tried life and diet and lifestyle changes. So nutrients. So CoQ10, I enjoy if you are on a statin medication, especially if you are on a statin medication. Let me word that. CoQ10 is essential if you are taking a statin medication. The reason being, CoQ10 and statins are in the same biochemical. CoQ10 is in the same biochemical pathway as cholesterol. So when we take a statin, not only does it block cholesterol from being made, but it also blocks CoQ10 from being produced. CoQ10 is a very, very powerful antioxidant that helps to protect your heart. So if you are taking a statin, if you know someone who's taking a statin, they need to be on CoQ10 in addition. It's very key. Okay. If they're not taking a statin, then like that study shows, even post heart attack, CoQ10 can be helpful. CoQ10, like I said, is an antioxidant. It's for the heart. Taurine. Taurine is going to help to reduce blood pressure. So if you are a person that struggles with blood pressure, taurine is made by the body. And as we age, like we do, things just get produced in lower and lower amounts. So with that being said, taurine can help to reduce blood pressure because it causes things to relax. So that's taurine. L-carnitine. L-carnitine is fuel for your heart cells. So remember, your heart is a muscle. It's constantly pumping 115,000 times a day. Okay. For those who work out, you're not even getting that kind of workout like your heart gets. So your heart is constantly pumping every single second. We need to be able to make sure that the cells in your heart have enough energy to keep pumping. And that's where L-carnitine comes in. People after a stroke who have had damage to their heart and their heart cells, carnitine is going to be great because it's going to help to supplement and provide them with the energy that they need, right? After someone's had a heart attack, they've lost tissue, they've damaged cells, their heart's not going to function as optimally. So every little thing that we can give to help support that person and their body and their feeling is going to be helpful. Fish oil, yes, fish oil. Fish oil is great because it brings down inflammation. Remember, excess fat, cholesterol, triglycerides, sugar hanging out in your blood vessels where it should not be causes inflammation. Our bodies are brilliant, right? So our bodies know that the only thing that should be in a blood vessel is blood. Anything else, it elicits this immune response that causes inflammation. So with that being said, fish oil helps to reduce inflammation in the body. It also helps to increase HDL, which is the happy, good cholesterol levels. All right, so now let's get into diet and home and lifestyle recommendations. So, the Mediterranean diet. When it comes to diet recommendations, um, Mediterranean diet is going to be something that I will pull pieces from. I might not recommend you follow it in its entirety. Remember, a lot of what I do is very individualized. So I might say, I need you to increase your olive oil. I need you to increase your nuts and your seeds. If you don't like fish, I'm not going to force it on you. But the Mediterranean diet essentially is a diet based on what folks in the Mediterranean Sea in and around that region eat. So they are surrounded by bodies of water. They have fresh fish. They have olive trees. So we're going to get olive oil. There's going to be nuts. There's going to be seeds. Lots of leafy greens. They're going to not be consuming excessive amounts of carbohydrates, white, refined, processed, sugary foods. They are not. So Mediterranean diet in this study, it showed it reduces the risk for heart disease by 30% versus a low-fat diet. So probably almost maybe like 2 decades ago, 20 years ago, like everything was low fat. You need to follow a low fat diet. If you have heart disease, you do stay away from fat, like you were banned from fat. But what they're finding now is that that's really not the case. And actually, really, if you want to support your heart health, Mediterranean diet is going to be the best. There's some other diets like the Whole30, Paleo that are also really good. I find that Mediterranean diet allows people to have a lot more flexibility versus Paleo, which is a lot stricter, and Whole30, which can be a little bit more challenging for folks to follow. But Mediterranean diet, you can still enjoy a glass of red wine here and now and again, a piece of dark chocolate. You can have your nuts. So you can still, your seafood and your lean protein. You can still enjoy that without all the many restrictions. So for that reason, I am a huge advocate of the Mediterranean diet. You're reducing your risk by 30%, right? Celery. This one's huge. So celery contains a compound that has been shown to lower blood pressure. And some studies, more and more studies are coming out. So what ended up happening was there was a gentleman who had high blood pressure. And what he did was he consumed a pound of celery a day and found that his blood pressure dropped about 40 points. Wow. So I don't need you to eat a pound of celery a day. 4 to 6 ribs a day is sufficient. And the reason being is celery has a compound in there that is very similar to many medications that people get placed on for blood pressure. So with that being said, let food be thy medicine, right? Like have your celery, have it with some hummus, have it with some nut butter. Like that's a great snack, because nut butter is a good fat. It's a heart healthy fat plus your celery. That's an awesome snack to have right there to protect your heart. Watch for hidden sugars. Excess sugar is going to increase triglycerides, which we talked about, right? VLDLs and how they get transformed into LDLs. That's not what we want. Excess sugar also increases inflammation in the body. Now your heart has to work harder and pump stronger because now it has to bypass through the narrowing of your vessels because of inflammation. Skip prepackaged and processed. That I'm just going to continue to say all the time. That's just intuitive. And then drink your water because you need to drink your water, right? Half of your body weight in ounces. So home and lifestyle recommendations. Self-care. I am huge on self-care. I'm an advocate of self-care. If you aren't taking care of yourself, then how can you be of service to anyone else? Really, truly, simply, that's what it is. Self-care helps with mental health. Self-care helps with stress. When you make that time for yourself and you put yourself forward, I'm telling you, your body goes into a state of healing and repair and recovery. Your blood pressure lowers. Exercise. So exercise is super important. Why is it super important? Because it helps to remember, your heart is a muscle. We have to work our muscles out. So it helps to strengthen your heart. It helps to strengthen your entire cardiovascular system. It's also going to help you maybe shed some extra pounds, right? One study found that even a 10-pound weight loss reduction had significant improvements on cardiovascular health. 10 pounds. Now I know 10 pounds might seem like a lot, and I get it, totally understand. But even if you were to do 2 pounds in 1 month and then another 2 pounds, those little changes are going to accumulate and have such a huge and profound effect on your health. Reduce stress. We talked about cortisol, the hormone cortisol, and how that affects your heart health. Reduce your stress. Stress is a silent killer. I can't say it enough. This is where self-care comes in. This is where exercise is. Stress just puts your body in this constant, tense, tight motion all the time. Sleep. You need to sleep. Maintain a healthy weight. Anytime we start to increase our weight, it just increases your risk of heart disease. Quit smoking. Remember the top 3 things, the top 3 risk factors for heart disease? Smoking, right? Cholesterol and blood pressure. Quit smoking. Smoking damages your blood vessels. Smoking causes inflammation. We do not want to damage our blood vessels because now we start to run into problems. Belly breathing and meditation. So this is huge. There was a study done that, so for those who practice yoga or meditation, you're familiar with this. You might be familiar with belly breathing. It's a completely different style of breathing when you are in a yoga class, and it's a deeper type of breathing. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, so I have practiced yoga in the past. I haven't, not yet, but I have in the past. But that being said, you feel lighter, you feel calmer, you feel at peace. They have done studies that have shown that even taking 5 to 6 deep, mindful breaths a day can reduce your blood pressure. All you have to do, it's not going to cost you any money. It's going to give you your self care right there. And you just sit there and take really deep breaths. Okay, so I'm going to be sending out a handout on belly breathing and getting more into that after this talk. So that's there for you. But just breathing. They have a machine called Respirate that, and there's even apps that you can download that'll help keep you mindful, and it'll set off an alert. So it'll be like, okay, time to take 2 deep breaths right now, and you work towards it. Yoga, once again, yoga would, could fall into self care, could fall into exercise. It's a great way to reduce stress. All right. So I just want to take this time, as always, to thank you for joining on this call. If you have any questions, as always, just go ahead and write them, send them to me in the chat. I'm going to just stop recording right there.